The Timekeeper's Burden. The Vaccine. Pittsburgh, 1955. The lab buzzed with the kind of intensity one had come to recognize, scientists rushing to meet a deadline that could change the world. I stood in the corner, out of sight, watching them move around in focused chaos. The scent of antiseptics and chemicals filled the air, but I could feel the weight of history here like I always did. I'm Elijah, a historian, a wanderer through time, tasked with ensuring that the pivotal moments of history happen as they are meant to. I've been doing this for millennia, ever since I was displaced from my own time, 3925 AD. Each event I witness, I have to let unfold. Sometimes, though, I have to nudge things back on track, quietly, without drawing attention. Today, I'm in Jonas Salk's lab. The polio vaccine is on the cusp of success, and if all goes as planned, today will be the day the world takes a step toward eradicating one of its deadliest diseases. But I know better than to trust everything to go according to plan. I received a message this morning like I always do. Salk's machine will fail. Fix it. A small, simple directive with massive consequences. It wasn't my first time getting a message like this, but each one comes with the same heavy responsibility. It's the weight of knowing that if I fail, millions might suffer. If I do nothing this moment, the one that could save countless lives, might slip through history's fingers. Jonas Salk stood on the other side of the lab, shoulders slumped from the weight of the moment, his mind likely running over every calculation, every test they'd done. I watched as he moved between his assistants, his focus so sharp it seemed like nothing could break through. Except Dr. Salk! One of the assistants, Margaret, called out, a note of panic rising in her voice. The centrifuge, it's not responding. We can't get it to stabilize. And there it was, the failure I'd been sent here to prevent. I stepped forward slowly, careful not to draw attention to myself too quickly. The assistant and Salk crowded around the machine, their worry growing with every passing second. Salk muttered, "We can't afford any interruptions." "Not now." I cleared my throat, stepping closer. "Excuse me, Dr. Salk. I might be able to help. I've worked with these machines before." I kept my voice steady, casual. In times like these, you have to appear to belong, just another face in the lab. Margaret looked hesitant, but Salk gave me a quick nod, desperation flashing in his eyes. "Go ahead," he said. "We don't have time to lose." I crouched by the machine. They didn't know it, but I'd seen this failure before. The power circuit had shorted, a small malfunction, barely noticeable. The kind of thing that could go wrong and delay the entire trial, maybe for days. Days that history couldn't afford. Days that polio victims didn't have. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the replacement part I'd brought with me. Just a small fuse, nothing fancy. But this tiny piece of equipment would keep history on track. I slid it into place, knowing the magnitude of this moment, and closed the machine. "There," I said, standing up and brushing my hands off. "It should work now." Margaret flipped the switch, and the machine hummed back to life. A collective sigh of relief swept through the lab, but I stayed quiet, stepping back into the shadows. I didn't belong in the spotlight. This moment wasn't mine. Salk gave me a quick nod. "Thank you," he said, already back to work. "Lucky timing," I replied, the words slipping out mechanically. It always was. The team continued, none the wiser about how close they had come to disaster. I stood there for a moment longer, watching them work. The hum of the machines, the quiet chatter of scientists, the distant clinking of glass, it all felt surreal. I had done what I came to do, and history would move forward as it should. Salk's vaccine would succeed, and in the years to come, polio would be eradicated. I turned and left the lab, walking down the hall toward the exit. The air outside was cooler than I expected. Crisp, almost refreshing. I took a deep breath, the smell of the city mixing with the familiar scent of autumn. As much as I tried to forget, moments like these always weighed on me. I knew what the world would remember: Jonas Salk's name in the history books, the headlines celebrating the end of a disease. And that was how it should be. But there was no place for people like me in history. No one would know about the quiet moments, the tiny adjustments, the invisible hand that kept the world spinning in the right direction. As I walked down the street, I reached into my coat pocket, feeling for my next message. Sure enough, the small slip of paper was there, folded and waiting, the ink still fresh. I unfolded it and read the familiar handwriting. Go to Massachusetts. Help Senator Kennedy. He will need you soon. I froze, the weight of the name hitting me like a punch to the chest. John F. Kennedy. I had heard the name before, of course. He was a rising star in American politics, and I knew that history had big plans for him. But the message didn't just speak of a senator. It spoke of something bigger, something I wasn't ready for yet. I folded the note and slipped it back into my coat. The next chapter was already calling, and I knew where I had to go. Massachusetts. Kennedy. History wasn't done with me yet.